That's a good click.
That's a better one, right?
Yeah, that's really good. This is what you tuned in for, guys. And me failed click.
Welcome back to Clicking with Jack and Danny.
Good evening.
Hello! Good. There's two very...
I was doing that to Cassie, but we're going to keep that as the actual intro now.
Oh.
That was to our, yeah. I was speaking to our editor, but good evening.
I was speaking to you all.
Yeah, hi everyone. How are you?
Hello. Good evening.
Good. Glad you're okay.
Good evening. I know I'm a tap to hit. A tap to hit?
What's that?
A cap to tip.
A cap to tip.
Sorry.
Doff your cap.
Anyway, welcome back to How No.
Yes.
It's been a fantastic week. Hopefully, no, not hopefully. This is exactly how it was. You received a double upload last week.
Yeah.
So Thursday and Sunday, we hit you with two How No's rather than the regular one on a Friday. Mm-hmm. We're doing it again.
Yeah. Same again.
It's a Thursday.
It's a Thursday. What we do? I think we shocked a few people in the comments on the first one.
We did.
People were saying.
People were like, "Is it Friday?"
People seem to judge their calendar by us, but they don't look at the actual date or time. They're like, "It
Which is wonderful.
It must be a Friday." But no, Thursday and Sunday.
Oh God, this week's flew by. It's a
I know.
Friday.
Yeah, someone said that. Someone was like,
Someone actually said that. Yeah.
My weekend can start now." Good, glad. Well, today's Thursday again. And Jack is going to be reading out a story for you.
I am.
And if you're new here, we always put up a lot of hype on the title. So Jack's going to give the title now. We're going to go, ooh, and then we're going to get straight into the story.
I kind of don't want you to do that this time.
Okay. I don't have to do that, yeah.
Oh, we'll see. It might be a really good time.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll see.
The title of this week's story is Camp Hollow.
I don't know what face to do. You told me I couldn't react.
Okay. You ready?
Camp Hollow was the perfect retreat for any growing boy or girl. In the brochures, it was advertised as a wilderness survival experience that would lay down the lessons that any young person needed to get by in the more primal places of the planet. At first, Jacob's mum thought it might be slightly too extreme to send an 11-year-old to, but after musing on it for a while and consulting with Jacob's dad, they figured that at the least Jacob needed something to test his boundaries. After all, maybe he'd learn a much needed lesson, and every growing boy could only dream of learning the basics of survival and self-sufficiency that Camp Hollow proudly offered. You see, this place was exclusive. To begin with, out of all the parents at school, none of them had even heard of Camp Hollow, and Jacob's mum took great pride in gloating at the other mothers and fathers, as she'd been the first of them to secure a place during the upcoming summer. Despite trying, and for weeks afterwards, the parents of Jacob's peers had failed at booking a place for their kids online. They'd ring his mother up late in the evening, desperate to get their child a spot on this year's roster, refreshing the booking page over and over. However, it was too late, and the same loading screen always followed. A message that read, "The candidates for this year's Camp Hollow experience have already been selected. Please try again next year." On the bright summer morning that Jacob set off for Camp Hollow, he barely said a word on the journey there. In fact, Jacob barely said a word to anyone about anything. He was a quiet kid who enjoyed his own space. He loved nothing more than to be lost with his own thoughts, dreaming up grand creations of other worlds than these. In fact, in many ways, Jacob was just a passenger to the life that his parents had forged for him. And everything that they did came from a place of love. But Jacob had known for a while, much to his dismay, that his comings and goings were the product of someone else's master plan, and he didn't quite know how to feel about that. When they arrived at Camp Hollow, the entryway was the most impressive structure that Jacob had ever seen. It was a wooden banner carved with furs and pelts, the snouts and jaws of every creature that made the wild their home. Grizzly bears, wolves, foxes, eagles and hawks. Jacob even thought he'd spied the dark, piercing eyes of a wolverine. On the top, in smooth, perfectly carved lettering, were the words Camp Hollow, and beneath it, a strange language that almost seemed like English, but not quite. The words seemed ancient to Jacob, as if they were the scripture of a long-lost civilization that had once called this place their home, but perhaps that was just his imagination. After all, Jacob had a habit of finding hidden wonder in the more mundane side of life. His parents' car made its way along the driveway, and quickly they joined a huddle of vehicles filled with excited parents and equally apprehensive children. A man in a blue linen shirt greeted them, clipboard in hand, checking off each child's name. Their parents said their goodbyes, kissed them on the cheek, and in an almost military-esque fashion, lined up and passed possession of their children over to the summer retreat. The first few days were uneventful enough. In fact, Jacob and the other kids at camp were a little bit put off by how normal things seemed. They spent their days swimming by the lake whilst a few camp counselors sat around in deck chairs making sure nobody drowned in the water. Every now and then they'd have a class on how to build a basic fire or carve a spout to drain sap from a tree. Jacob learned how to salvage flint and tinder from the forest bed and whether to look for brittle stones or greenwood when building a hearth, but for the most part, nothing exactly seemed new to any of them. In fact, it all seemed pretty basic compared to the cutting-edge wilderness experience that their parents and the brochures had so eagerly promised. A few of the children had worked up the courage to ask the camp counselors what they'd had planned, but between taking their headphones out despondently and fanning themselves with magazines, they all had the exact same answer. "We're waiting for Mackinac Joe," they'd say. "He's great. He should be here in a few days and then the real survival experience can begin." Jacob thought it was interesting that they'd have to wait for another counsellor to show up before the real stuff could even get started, but he had no other reason to doubt them. After all, he was merely a passenger, and Camp Hollow had promised a completely different destination than what had been offered so far. After several days though, Mackinac Joe was still nowhere to be seen, and after an afternoon and a late evening of striking through the same played-out wilderness adventure routine, Jacob headed back to his bunk with the several other kids that he'd shared it with. After a few hours of strangely similar ghost stories over torchlight, all of which Jacob had already guessed the ending to, the bunk had finally fallen soundly asleep. But in a strange fleeting instance, as if time itself had nodded off to slumber, Jacob awoke to darkness. Outside the cabin he heard the familiar hum of an engine and the muffled voices of men hollering back and forth. He sat bolt upright, scanning the gloom of the bedroom for any other children awake. Nothing. They were all soundly slumbering in the dark. And gradually the chorus of industry became louder, so much so that Jacob crept out of bed and peered his head out of the faux glass window. In the campground, the engine of a large haulage truck sputtered in the blank expanse of the night, and as the shadows of people flitted across the ground, Jacob spied a tall man in a wide-brimmed hat with 3 bright feathers poking out of the hem. Beside him, one of the camp counselors held a clipboard and was taking notes of every word he said. "She's back alive," he boomed, "and she's made it very clear that she wants no more survivalists this year. She wants beasts. She wants wild monstrosities at the flick of a switch, so get hauling, you ingrates. It's been a busy week." Mackinac Joe flicked his finger out past the truck, out toward the gloom, and in the shadows Jacob could vaguely make out the shapes of men carrying large square boxes, almost like cages. Suddenly something came over him, the curiosity of intrigue that had so often followed him, and before he knew it, he was unlatching the lock of the cabin door and he stepped out into the darkness. As he paced forward, Mackinac Joe locked eyes with him as if he was almost pleased at the sight of him. He raised a fat, stubby finger in his direction, and as if he'd almost planned it, he boomed, "Looks like this one's ripe for the picking. Let's see if she's left us the right instructions." Before he knew it, Jacob felt 2 firm hands on his shoulders, 2 of the camp counselors that had made up his past few days, and before he knew it, they were guiding him toward the bleak shadow of the truck and the pile of strange boxes that had been unloaded. Strangely, Jacob felt like he couldn't even fight back. It felt wrong, going along with the fervent banter that Mackinac Joe was spewing, but he couldn't help it. It felt like the right thing to do, somehow. And before he knew it, Jacob was standing in front of one of those exact same shadowy boxes out on the edge of the tree line. A strange growl came from it, a low, guttural sound like the braying of a beast. And as he stepped forward in the bars of the cage, 2 dark, piercing eyes locked onto his. And then he felt a thick, fleshy hand on the top of his head, and he heard the voice of Mackinac Joe. He was speaking in a strange, ancient tongue, and quickly the cadence of his speech became slower and slower, as if it was seeping into him like an oddly familiar lullaby. Slowly, gradually, the taste of blood passed upon Jacob's lips, and he was stood there, transfixed at the moving shadows behind the darkness, rolling and clawing out into the pitch black unknown, and then, writhing in the shadow, together, it became nothing. When Jacob woke up, he was perched behind a tree. He was crouched, his knees bent, and when he looked down at his hands, they were covered in the bright red spatter of blood. He looked up and saw a figure approaching him, a familiar shape with a wide-brimmed hat with 3 bright feathers tucked in the hem. He held his hand out and he snapped his fingers. Click. Jacob woke up again. This time he was in a car, travelling down a strange country road, endless pine trees in the distance. When he turned his head, he saw Mackinac Joe sat next to him. He smiled and said, "How does it feel, boy? You getting used to it yet?" Then he held his fingers aloft and snapped them together. Click. The next time Jacob woke up and was in a wooden camp hall, there were long rows of wooden tables that lined the room. On the floor were the gentle spatters of a strangely familiar red mist. Jacob breathed it in. It smelled fantastic, and beside him were several other kids, their eyes brown and blue and black, hunched over like strange beasts, shirtless and panting like a dog does without too much water. As he scanned his eyes across the room, he saw a strange pattern of pale blue material scattered on the floor. But as his head turned to scan his surroundings, he felt a familiar, thick finger on his chin, and then a click, and then a voice. "Don't you worry about them," it said. "They knew exactly what they were signing up for." And again, a click, and then a click, 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 and then, strangely, Jacob opened his eyes, and he found himself standing in the exact same gravel parking lot that his parents had dropped him off at before scarpering away in a hurry. All those days, weeks, perhaps months ago. In fact, Jacob wasn't entirely sure how much time had passed, but when his mum ran up to him and threw her arms around him, it felt like it had been merely days before they'd last seen each other. She kissed him on the cheek, and without saying a word, Jacob piled into his parents' car, tucked neatly in the back seat. As they pulled away, though, a strangely familiar hand thrust its way onto the corner of the doorframe, and then a head peered inside, covered by a wide-brimmed hat with 3 strangely familiar feathers tucked into its hem. It was Mackinac Joe. "It's only proper to introduce myself. Your son has been one of our best students this year," he said, in his oddly familiar tone. "You should be proud of him. It's safe to say that he's not the boy he was when you dropped him off. He's changed, haven't you? All for the better." He peered his head toward Jacob and grinned ear to ear. "Isn't that right?" he said. "In fact, why don't you show them?"
Then what? Then where do they go? Ooh. For some reason I'm picturing like Big Bird from Hell.
Yeah.
What's about those yellow feathers? But
Yeah,
like, just,
yeah. Big Bird from Hell. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Just like, yeah. Horrific, yeah. What was, it's gonna be one of those ones where you're gonna like withhold information.
Maybe.
Because I really want to know what was going on with the snaps. Like, what was it on the same plane? Was it like a parallel thing?
Same plane. Yeah.
Same plane.
I could give you answers. I could give you answers for this one.
Yeah. Okay. And like, why does some of the kids have black eyes and the other ones seem to have like fine eyes? Were they like a next stage or something?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And why did Jacob get? Why did he get? Well, he didn't get away, obviously, because he's sort of like still trapped in this loop now, presumably. But is he going up in that room? Is that like the next stage, or one of the stages?
What's the name of the camp?
Camp Hollow.
What do you do with something that's hollow?
Fill it. So they're filling it with souls. Yeah.
Of
Children.
filling children's souls with
The evil magic.
what were in the cages.
What was carved on the banner of the campgrounds?
The like ancient dark language.
That's the device of it. Yeah. I feel like this is the most revelatory one we've had. Because I feel like, again, I didn't signpost a lot of it, but I feel like there were enough allusions in there for me to reveal what it was.
Yeah. I do want to know more. That's why I actually really liked about it as well, because it was very much from the perspective of his eyes.
Yeah.
Which I think you do.
So, oh my God.
It's okay.
So, never do that.
You write, whenever you do stories from the point of view of children, it's a really good device you use, how you use their sort of naivety or their innocence or their just ignorance of the world and what's going on.
Yeah.
Like painting that world. Like it makes it even more mysterious, because there's certain things where if an adult was in that situation, they would know things, or they would behave a certain way, or they would ask a certain thing. But
that's why I think
Jacob, it was like,
yeah, that's why I think the eyes of a child is such a good horror device.
Yeah,
you know, because it's kind of the subversion of innocence, and it's the vessel of innocence. You know what I mean? That kind of makes things scarier.
Yeah, it's true. It does remind me a bit of I'm getting a bit of Stranger Things vibes.
Yeah,
like taking like a classic scenario, not so much coming from the UK, but like the whole camp, going to camp.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a classic sort of 80s, 90s.
Well, I was inspired partly by your last story, Tickets Please, which is fantastic. If you haven't seen Tickets please check it out. Give us your tickets. But how I said last week how I loved it because it was kind of like tropey in all the good ways. You know what I mean? It was like classic genre horror, which is like a train. Yeah. And that kind of inspired me to do, like a camp. Like that's the classic American slasher horror. But again, I wanted to.
That's what I was thinking.
What I do, and
but that in itself was a nice subversion, because I was thinking, obviously the way you painted him, like when you first said he was like standing outside and talking to someone with a clipboard and stuff. I was like, you know how your brain races to try and figure out what's happening. I was like, all right, he wants to like literally like eat the children or something. Class it, and to be like camp slash.
It's the classic Goosebumps one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be like cut and shut, so to speak. Do you know what I mean?
Again, I feel like I've almost, because no matter how much I wanted that to be kind of like a standalone thing, again, I've written myself into this whole master.
Well, did we talk about that off camera or on camera last time?
Off camera.
So do you want to announce it now?
Don't.
Okay, well you just kind of have.
Because for Ancestry, a few people are on the right lines.
Okay. Well, I guess we can safely say something is up with all of Jack's videos.
Yes,
that's fair. Without leaving them confused about this exchange, but not giving away too much. Something is up. So that's not a good reason to go back and watch Jack's other videos. I don't know why. It's because we talked off camera a bit last week, and he's weaving something. I don't even think he knows what it is yet. But
I'm starting to get a better idea.
Like out of control for you.
I will say there was a direct reference in this one to my last story.
Oh, your last story?
Yeah.
Oh.
There was a direct reference.
Well, I was thinking about references. I'll come back to that. I was thinking about references, and like, for some reason, I'm picturing the friendship box being sort of set in the same world. Something about box. I don't know, but maybe I was on the wrong. But anyway, what was the reference?
Mackinac Joe said she wants.
Yeah.
She doesn't want survivalists. She wants monstrosities.
Monstrosities.
So she. That was the
okay.
reference.
Okay.
She.
Well, I believe me and the audience are both. We're on the same path. I'm right there with you. Like we have to go back and watch Jack's videos because I'm like really intrigued to see where it's going. Also, I always bring it back to like sort of literary things, and I really liked the bit right at the start where you said that the message said they'd already been selected. That was really good. Like you know what you were doing there. Like they'd already been selected. Because obviously you see that and you think, oh, they've already been selected, as in we've got everyone we need, but the parents aren't choosing. Like, they've already been selected. Like they, it's almost like, were they willed into going there?
Again,
was there
that was an illusion. I'd rather.
Yeah. You seem uncomfortable. You're like, that's too dark.
No, I think in many ways, I'm a bit of a stickler for that, for kind of like leaving things open-ended. Mm-hmm. But that's just the way that I like things. This was my attempt at trying to write a cut and shut horror story, and I still feel like
You bastard. Yeah, I was going to say, but no, but people love that. I always see comments all the time being like, I love that it leaves me with something, you know? That's one of the criteria we said for like a really, really high scoring story is that it will affect you, like actually affect you, and how you see the world.
All those weeks ago when we laid those.
Yeah,
when we laid those
and obviously
podcasts.
we're talking, when we say that, we're talking about affect you in a, like, oh, I'm shaken up way.
Yeah.
But even if it just leaves you with questions or leaves you wanting more, like, yeah. So it's great that you tried that and it worked really well, and that is a self-contained story. Don't get me wrong, but you've also set yourself up for a great sequel, or to get the story to let the story go further if you want, which I'm sure it will, judging by that grid. Is actually. Is it going to be next week? Is it going to be like a sequel?
Endgame. We're in the endgame now, Danny.
Bit of yeah.
By the way, yeah, we're gonna have to re-record those. My snaps were crap. There we go.
That's a good click.
That's a better one, right?
Yeah, that's really good.
This
is what you tuned in for, guys. Me fail click.
Welcome back to Clicking with Jack and Danny.
If someone walks in the room now and they're like, "Oh, what are you watching? What are you watching, son?" or something like that, and it's just me and you going in front of a campfire. All right. Well,
anyway, yeah, that's probably a good way to segue away from this week's story.
How about we do a score?
Scores on the door.
Yeah. I had a score in mind, like you always say.
Go with that.
But after talking to you, and also like, I'm not gonna lie, this whole sort of bigger picture you're building with your stories, whatever it is really intriguing, and perhaps my mind is racing ahead of me. But I'm gonna give that a 7.9.
That's more than I expected.
I'm gonna give it a 7.9.
Wow, man.
But I feel like it's really frustrating with these ones where you're laying the pieces down, because I feel like when I see all the different pieces together, I'd be like, oh, that's okay, and that was linked to that. So like,
yeah. I know.
But in respect to you writing a self-contained story, that's what I'm giving it.
Thanks, man. No. I think that's more than kind. I kind of had like maybe like a 7.6, 7.7 in my head, but
no, I think
7.9. I'll take it.
No, I think for the reasons I stated, I thought it was really well paced, really well written. Mackinac Joe was creepy as hell. I love the clicking. That was really good.
You love clicking.
I can't click really. By the way, the reason I can't click is I click with my index finger and my thumb. I can't do it with that. Yeah. I can't. But yeah.
There you go.
It's my index finger and thumb. Yeah.
That's so bizarre. It always doesn't look.
No.
I can't.
No, that's where
yours goes the other way. Look.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, we're getting back to it, for God's sake.
Sorry.
All right, guys.
That's enough for clicking with Danny and Jack.
If you have your own, well, we're like racing to get out of the video now. If you have your own story, a lot of you guys will know this, but make sure you send it into this email address right here. We definitely, I hope, because we're filming this in the past, but yes. I definitely hope we read out some of your stories on our last live stream.
It was a great live stream. We loved it.
It was amazing. I love that bit with the
bit with the.
Yeah, that was great.
That was
but
what are we talking about? It's been a long day here in No Forest. We're terribly sorry.
Keep sending your stories in.
We love
we're going to be doing more live streams, hopefully at least once a month, if not more. And we'll keep reading them out. And keep letting us know what you like about the channel, what you don't like, what you want to see in the future. And in the meantime,
more clicking.
Keep clicking. Stay away from camps.
Hollows.
I've had some terrible advice in these videos. I've said stay away from the police. Stay away from camps. I'm like,
that was week 3. I think. You're like, stay away from the police.
But yeah, thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you so much,
Jack Finch,
Danny Burke. This has been How No. Usually we blow the fire out if you're new here, so we're gonna blow it out. Usually we say something.
Well, I like
we
to sort of watch. You didn't want to click it out?
I think we should click it
out.
out.
I did my weird little.
Ready?
Okay.
Oh no! Oh, we click it out.
Yeah, the wind.
That's some powerful clicking.